The Sikha of Tzav 1 is trying to explore a pattern in Rashi. Why sometimes does Rashi come and explain V'zois Teiras and give context, sometimes he doesn't. And the Rebbe explains that by default, Teiras would refer to whatever content we're talking about now. So Zois Teiras Asham, we're now learning about the Asham because we never really learned much about it till now. The problem is, in some of the cases, we already discussed them fully in Parshas Vayikra. And the Rebbe then focuses specifically on Chatos and Mincha, because Chatos and Mincha don't fall into that category, because Chatos was already explained earlier. So then why doesn't Rashi have to come and explain what Teiras over here is? And for that, the Rebbe answers that there's the Karban Oil V'Yered, which is very much discussed over here. And you would say that the word Teiras is here to explain the Karban Oil V'Yered, which follows immediately, that even though sometimes it's not even a Karban, it's a Mincha, nevertheless, you still have to, when you bring it a Karban as an animal, you have to bring it in Safran. Then the Rebbe explains why Mincha you do have to explain. And you could have just said that it's talking about here, that there's something to be marba here. And the Rebbe says, because the thing that we're marba here comes after a hefsek, it's a new parsha, it says Vayidaber Hashem, it's an interruption, so it's not actually sure what the context is, and therefore Rashi has to explain it. But then the Rebbe comes and moves on to the Hoira. And the Rebbe says that we see now that there's two things that Parshas Tzav adds over Parshas Vayikra. Sometimes it adds new halachas, new details, and sometimes he adds new dinim, new things that we never even discussed, new kinds of categories. So that's the difference between kamus and echos. Echos is when you're just adding details, and kamus is when you're adding fundamental new points. Then the Rebbe says an interesting hira, kind of takes in a different direction where the Sikha was going till then. The Rebbe says that in general, Gashmius is kamus, and echos is ruchnius. And from the fact that we see that in Parashat Tzav we're adding echos and kamus, we see that kamus and echos actually are connected. Now, there's a general principle that the Rebbe would say in other places, and that is the more you add in kamus and you're learning, that it adds an echos. But over here the Rebbe says, if we connect kamus to gashmius and echos to ruchnius, the lesson over here is that you need gashmius in order to elevate, to add in ruchnius. Not by escaping this world, the famous principle of Chassidus, not by escaping this world, but rather through using gashmius. That's how you add and you increase this world. And the Rebbe uses the words, from matter you make spirit, and from kamus macht men echos, and from quantity you make quality. Kamus turns into echos, and that accomplishes an incredible elevation even in the neshama itself. And the Rebbe says then in Ois Tes, a new point, that the avodah v'safa b'kamus in a more wider context is working with Yidden, as many Yidden as possible, to bring them closer. Even Yidden, at least superficially, seem that they're not royal Mizbeach, they're psulin. Even them we bring over onto Mizbeach, and in a way, im alu lo yerdu, that's the halacha, that once they went up, you can't go down. And then the Rebbe says that brings Meir Einei Shneim, the famous Mishlei that the Tanya brings, that it lightens both eyes, both the person who's doing the kiruv and the other person who's receiving it. They both get an Or Gadol, which is an incredible light. Your quality goes up by the mere fact that you went out to add quality, to bring more Yidden, that adds your quality, and you stay on the Mizbeach, and you're constantly, your fire is incredible, and you manage to elevate the light of the darkness of Golus to the light of